Raising your own chickens can be easy if you know what you're doing. I'm going to answer some of the most common questions to help you get started. First, what do chickens need? They need housing. I'll talk more about that in the housing chapter. Then they need fencing. I would say at least 3 square foot area outside. They need feed, of course. I would start off with commercial grain and then begin transitioning to more creative feeds. Of course, if you're going to feed them feed, they're going to need feeders sometimes. I use pans to feed more liquid stuff and automatic feeders for grain. And oftentimes I just throw it on the ground if I want the chickens to till it in, and naturally a chicken bends over and eats their feed. So more often than not, I throw it directly on the ground. Then you need grit, which are tiny rocks that the chicken will eat. It goes down into their gizzard, which is a muscle that begins to work that rock into the food and helps break it down for them. Chickens need a dust bath. This is an area they can go. It's dry, it's full of dirt. They can just wallow in there and get all the mites off of them. They need calcium. Laying birds need calcium. So you can feed back the eggshells, or you can actually buy oyster shell calcium at the store. And lastly, if you're bringing in chicks, you're gonna need a brooder. You're gonna need a small area to mimic mother hen to raise those chicks. Now that we know what we need to know where to get it. For housing, I like to do a lot of do-it-yourself stuff. All the plans for everything I've got on my farm for housing is in our ebook. You can also go on Craigslist and find a great local used source for housing that might fit your need. You can also build one yourself or even buy it at your feed store or off Craigslist for new or something like that. Then you need to get your fencing. I get Premier One fencing. I go directly through them in the catalog and have a great selection. I've been using that since the beginning and I had no reason to replace it. I'm still using my original fence from years ago. Then there's waterers. I really, and for that matter, waterers and feeders, I really like Miller Manufacturing. There's such a variety of feeders in the sense of pans or automatic feeders, and for waters, there's quart-size waterers, there's small, medium, and large-size vacuum-sealed water that I really love to use. For your brooder, you can do it yourself with a plastic bin or cardboard box or even a wooden box. If you need to buy one, they make them pre-made. Miller Manufacturing makes one, works great. So how much does all this cost? Well, housing can be anywhere from $0 to $1,000. $0 if you scrap together all your material, $1,000 if you're buying something brand new, pre-made. I built my chicken tractor, to give you an idea, for about $200. Fencing, electric fencing, is about $175 for a roll. That'll hold up to 50 birds, easy. The energizer for that fence, to keep it charged and make it hot so it will electrify something if it runs into it, will cost anywhere from $115. That's a plug-in one. And some of the solar-powered ones, if you don't have access to electricity, can be on up to about $800. I spend about $250, $300 on my energizers. Waterers cost anywhere from $3 to $52. $3 for the little tiny one that attaches to a quart jar, and $52 for some of the big 8-gallon waterers. Feed, if you implement all my creative feeds, you're not going to spend any money on feed, but you could spend on up to $34 for a 50-pound bag of organic feed. Grit, it can be free if you get it out of the creek as sand, or you can spend $1 a pound at the feed store, so it's not very much, and they don't eat very much of that. Then there's calcium. Again, that can be $0 if you feed back their own eggs, or it could be about $3 a pound at your feed store. Altogether, reasonable setup, chicken tractor size setup, 6 to 12 chickens, 1 poultry net pen, easily under $300. People wonder how much work are chickens. Well, let me give you an idea based on daily, weekly, and yearly chores. For me, in the morning, I get up, I wash the chickens' waterer, I fill it up. I feed them. This includes going out and getting live feeds. I let the chickens out. That takes less than 10 minutes, easy. In the evening, I close their door, and I check the fence, make sure it's electrified. Easily, under 5 minutes. So easily under 15 minutes, daily chores. Once a week, I like to move my chickens to new areas. That can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And once a year, I do a butchering. And me and one other person can butcher 50 chickens in one day. So now let's go into egg production. What are some common questions I get about that? First, how many eggs do you get out of a laying hen? Well, the average laying hen is going to give you about 4 eggs a week. That'd be a good one. If you just want eggs and you're not interested in meat, you could get a breed like the Leghorn, and they'll give you about 6 eggs a week. They'll start laying at about 5 months old, and they'll lay until they're about 2.5 years old productively. They'll continue laying the rest of their life, but after 2.5 years, their production can drop up to 50%. So you would want to cull them at the end of the 3rd summer. If you're in the city or suburbs, you might think about whether it's illegal or not. I would suggest going ahead and doing it.
So you want to get to chickens, they're illegal. Let's go to changing the code. And there are strategies now. For 4 years, I was co-host of the Chicken Whisperer talk show. And we would track these. They would come on there, and we'd try to get the town council on, or the city council, or the county commissioners. And we'd have a big debate on the radio. And it, quite frankly, got kind of old because there was always the same story. A few people just did not want to have chickens. They were elected, and so their personal opinions ruled over even though there might be a public hearing that was packed with pro-chicken advocates. In fact, that just happened up in Augusta County, Virginia, not too long ago. So you get it changed, and often it has to proceed election by election. And that's where we've got the chicken ticket is out. It's a policy and program guide for politicians, so they can say, yes, I'm green, yes, I'm for local foods, and yes, I'm for family flocks. I will support family flocks. Because in our opinion is the Gossamer Foundation. It's a nonprofit I work with. In our opinion, any politician that says, I'm green, I'm for local foods, but I vote against family flocks, they're simply a hypocrite. I mean, they don't understand the system, and they're not walking their talk. So the stakes are high. We're taking a pretty hard line against it because we think that the right for people to have their own food and raise their own food is a natural law right that trumps any man-made, arbitrary, capricious law that says you can't feed yourself. I mean, it's just not right. So we tell people go ahead and do it anyway. And what we've got now is the Chicken Underground. The Chicken Underground was born out of a mastermind meeting after the Augusta County Board of Supervisors voted it down, saying they had to protect the industry poultry jobs. But Joel Salatin was there, and Joel was interviewed by CBS at the end of the hearing, and he said basically what's happened here is just another example of them trying to control our food supply. And he said it's about time for some civil disobedience. It worked for Henry David Thoreau, and it'll work now. Go ahead and do it anyway. So based on that, we came out with the Chicken Underground, and the Chicken Underground is basically, say, if I have chickens where my chickens are legal here, if I have chickens because they're legal, and you don't, say, Justin, you don't have chickens, but you'd really like to have some, I said, Justin, please, would you do me a favor and chicken sit for me? Chicken sit for me. Here's 4 hens. Would you just keep them? They're not illegal because they're not living there. They're just visiting. You don't own them, so it's okay. And if anything happens for whatever reason, I'll come and move them. No questions asked, and we can do it really fast with the Chicken Underground.
Y'all might also wonder, what kind of chickens should I get? I recommend dual-purpose breeds. They're good for meat, eggs. They also tend to be productive, hardy, and also reproductive. They can reproduce themselves. Along those lines, I would recommend 5 of the most popular breeds that meet that permaculture criteria. That would be the Buff Orpington, the Rhode Island Red, the Black Australorp, the Plymouth Rock, the Wyandotte. I would say those are some of the 5 most popular dual-purpose breeds that would be good for what we're trying to do. If you just want eggs, I would suggest a breed like the Leghorn, the Americana, or the Acuna. And if you just want meat, think about the Brahma, or the Indian Game, or the Naked Neck. Another question you might have is, should I get a rooster? First of all, they're not needed for egg production. But if you want those eggs fertilized, you're gonna need to get a rooster. They also complete a social structure in the flock. They also serve as protectors for predators. They'll go around and dig up food for the ladies. I think they're more beautiful. They're fun to watch. They have a little dance with the hens. They take care of them. They crow. I know some people might think that's annoying, but it's kind of that farm essence just to hear a rooster crow. It's kind of neat. Now that we've covered a lot of the basic questions, let's go. Let's just do this. Let's get some baby chicks. So where do I get them? Well, my first choice would be a local breeder. Why? Because you can go and check out their operation, because then they're there for support. And it's a lot less stress if you're just driving those chicks from the breeder to your house. My second choice, if you can't find a local breeder, would find a shipping breeder. And then, because those are going to have good genetics and you're still going to have that support. If you can't do any of that, you're going to have to resort to the hatcheries. And that's okay. If that's all you got, that's going to do. Once you've got a chick source, you got to get ready for your chicks. You can do it in 3 easy steps. 1, you need to get all the supplies. Get a small waterer, a small feed, build a small feed trap that would go over a pan inside the deep bedding that would have a wire mesh over it. And so when the chickens get up on top of that, the dirt and the debris falls through and it doesn't get into the feed and water. You'll need little bits of grit. I suggest a natural boost of water. That means you mix together some crushed garlic, some apple cider vinegar, just a little bit, and just a little bit of honey, and put it in your quart jar, and that'll give them a nice health boost from the stress of whether you're picking them up at the breeder or you have them shipped. Then I would suggest the first day or so, and if you're out in the cold, maybe in a basement or something, to do a heat lamp. Just warm it up for them that first time. Just give them a nice cozy feeling when they come home to you. You need to have some pine shavings ready, and I suggest piling it in the bottom of that brooder. If you can, 8 inches, but at least 4. And if you do it deep enough, you're not going to have to change it out the entire time. That'll keep the smells down. That's somewhere for the manure to go. That's a place for the chickens to scratch. Then it's time to set up the brooder. You first get your brooder, then you pour your shavings in. You set up the food trap or the dirt trap. Put your waterers and feeder on top of that. You want to leave 3 square feet per 12 chicken for up to 3 weeks. That's how much room you're in. So my brooder is plenty of room for 8 to 12 chickens. You need to keep the lamp, if you use a heat lamp, 18 inches away from flammable surface. I'd hate to see there be a fire. You want to make sure you use the appropriate connections. You don't want to use a 250 watt light bulb with the wrong outlet connection. Then you want to cover the chickens at night, especially if you're not using a heat lamp. I take a little cardboard box and just put them over at night. It mimics mama hen. And keep them in there, I would say no more than 3 weeks, especially if it's warm outside. Maybe transitioning out on warm days during the day and keeping them in at night, but then definitely can be outside. They're going to be really hardy by the time they're 3 weeks old and can handle probably down to 30-degree weather. So you've got everything set up. Now your chicks are here. You're actually ready to start picking up chicks from the box and putting it in the brooder. Hopefully it's warm. You've got your light going. You got your health boost there ready in your water. Go ahead and take your chicks. As you put them in, dip their beak in that water to make sure they get going, and then just let them go. I would then start bringing in live foods every day, just a little bit of grass, or better yet, if you have a porta brooder, that you can leave the chicks in there at night and then bring them out on warm days and create some kind of cage around it so they can get the green grass themselves. It's just wonderful for them. Some problems you might incur with the brooder is wet bedding. If somehow they spill their drink, then you've got to fix that. You can either add more shavings or pull those shavings out. If the brooder gets smelly, I think that's bad management. If you have bad smells on the farm, it's an indication of bad management. Most of the time you can just add more deep bedding, which is your wood shavings, and you'll be all right. A lot of times you'll get what we can call the fines, and when you get that chick start feed, it can be almost dusty, some of it, and the chicks won't pick that up. But to encourage them to do that, you can add a little bit of water to it and stir it around, or whey or milk, and that way it'll become edible for them. There can be something like cannibalism if they start pecking each other. If that happens, they're way too stressed out. It's poor feed, or most likely a tight confined area, and it could just be bad genetics, and you need to separate the bad one out. What's somewhat common is what you call pasty butt, especially if all you're feeding is commercial grain feed. Their butt would just clog up with poop, and if you don't clear that, they're not going to be able to relieve themselves. So you got to get on some rubber gloves and just pull it out. They'll be fine as long as you catch it in time. If their waters are getting messy, just do everything you can so they won't. Make sure you make a trap so that they have to walk over either cardboard or that wire mesh trap I was speaking to you about, and keep that water clean. As far as how much meat you can get out of a chicken, I would say 3 to 6 pounds, depending on the breed, depending on the age that you harvest it. When do you butcher? I recommend butchering these kinds of chickens that I recommend between 16 and 18 weeks old, give or take. And that's for a broiler, quick, put it on the rotisserie, put it on the grill, tenderness. But you can also butcher the chickens when they're old, 2.5 years or older, but that's gonna be your stewing birds. You're gonna turn those into a soup or chicken and dumplings or something like that, some long cook, crock pot method.